Welcome back to part 2 of the brown bear deep dive. Turns out, when you have a species with over a dozen subspecies, some of which look nearly identical unless you've got their dental records, things get complicated. In part 1 we covered some of the biggest and best known bears. Now it's time for the rest of them. The Alaskan brown bear, Ursus arctos gyas, is what happens when you take the general brown bear template, drop it into some of the richest ecosystems on Earth, and let it eat until it forgets what hunger feels like. Found across coastal Alaska, these bears are some of the largest brown bears alive, though they don't quite hit Kodiak bear levels unless they're exceptionally well fed. Even so, with adult males averaging 800 to 1,200 pounds and standing over 9 feet tall when they rear up, the term brown bear feels a bit understated. The reason for all that bulk comes down to location, location, location. Alaskan brown bears live where the salmon run like clockwork, and nothing fuels bear growth like an all-you-can-catch buffet of high-fat fish. During peak salmon season, bears line the rivers like furry tourists at a free seafood festival, each one staking out a prime fishing spot. Some develop distinct techniques, from standing in rapids with mouths open like grizzly pelicans, to sitting comfortably on the banks waiting for a more energetic bear to fumble their catch. Outside of salmon season, Alaskan brown bears show off their flexible side, grazing on sedges, berries, roots and shellfish, and occasionally helping themselves to carcasses or the rare unlucky moose. Like all brown bears, they're opportunistic omnivores, meaning if it's edible, they'll give it a shot. They're walking garbage disposals with fur, and it works remarkably well. They have the classic bear build, with a broad concave face, powerful limbs, and the signature shoulder hump that serves as a natural weightlifting belt, powering their digging and log-flipping muscles. Their fur ranges from dark brown to golden, sometimes with blonde highlights that would look suspiciously expensive in a salon. The coastal diet, particularly the fat-packed salmon, helps fuel their exceptional size, putting them well above the average inland grizzly in both bulk and confidence. Speaking of confidence, Alaskan brown bears are often a little less aggressive than their inland relatives, thanks to more reliable food sources. When you live in a place where calories are practically falling from the sky, there's less incentive to fight over every scrap. That said, they're still bears. Territorial, moody, and very willing to bluff charge anyone who gets too close to their fishing spot, their cubs, or their personal space bubble. Hibernation follows the usual brown bear pattern, with Alaskan brown bears bulking up all summer and fall, then digging dens in hillsides or under root systems to sleep through the lean winter months. Pregnant females give birth mid-hibernation, welcoming tiny, blind, and completely helpless cubs into a world they won't properly see for weeks. Those cubs spend the next 2 to 3 years learning the bear essentials: where to fish, how to flip rocks for food, and how to bluff charge without overcommitting. Culturally, Alaskan brown bears are icons featured in documentaries, wildlife calendars, and viral clips of bears catching salmon mid-air. But they're not just Instagram famous. They also play a key role in indigenous Alaskan traditions, often seen as powerful spirits connected to the land. The Alutiiq, Tlingit, and other native Alaskan cultures respected bears for their strength and intelligence, understanding that sharing space with a creature that could end you at any moment required both caution and reverence. The Syrian brown bear, Ursus arctos syriacus, is proof that not all brown bears need to be giant, salmon-gobbling tanks to make an impression. Found in the mountain forests and rocky hills of the Middle East, including parts of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Armenia, and once upon a time Syria itself, these bears are the smallest of the brown bear subspecies. But don't mistake size for weakness. What they lack in bulk, they make up for in adaptability, scrappiness, and the sheer audacity it takes to be a bear in a region better known for goats, droughts, and the occasional ancient empire. Syrian brown bears stand out thanks to their paler, sandy brown to almost blonde fur, which blends nicely with the arid, rocky terrain they call home. Adult males rarely exceed 400 pounds, and many are significantly smaller, especially in areas where food is scarce and competition is stiff. Compared to their beefy Siberian or Alaskan cousins, they look almost petite, though still very much capable of turning over boulders or making regrettable life choices if provoked. The Syrian brown bear menu is about as broad as the landscape demands. Berries, nuts, roots, insects, small animals and carrion all make the list. And while they don't get the luxury of a salmon buffet like their coastal relatives, they've been known to raid orchards, vineyards and apiaries, proving that if you leave food unguarded in bear country, you're basically writing an invitation. This flexibility is key to their survival, especially in regions where droughts and human activity shrink natural food supplies year after year. They are solitary most of the time, except for brief, awkward romantic encounters in mating season and mothers with cubs who tend to become aggressively protective the moment anyone looks at their offspring the wrong way. As with other bears, territorial squabbles can happen, though when resources are scarce, most bears would rather avoid a fight and conserve calories. Hibernation isn't always guaranteed either. In colder, higher elevations, Syrian brown bears den up through the winter, usually in caves or rock crevices, much like their Himalayan relatives. But in warmer areas, especially where food remains available year-round, they might skip hibernation altogether. Because why sleep when you could be eating? The Carpathian brown bear, Ursus arctos, is the Eastern European heavyweight, a subspecies of the Eurasian brown bear that spent the last few thousand years perfecting the art of being both elusive and unavoidable. Found across the Carpathian Mountains, especially in Romania, Slovakia and Ukraine, these bears have carved out a surprisingly comfortable niche in some of Europe's last great wilderness areas, when they're not raiding orchards or casually wandering into villages. With a population estimated at 6,000 or more, Romania alone hosts the largest brown bear population in Europe outside of Russia, meaning if you're looking for bears in Europe, the Carpathians are the place to start. Carpathian brown bears are classic middleweight brown bears, not as enormous as Alaskan coastal bears, but still plenty big enough to ruin your picnic plans. Adult males can weigh between 400 and 700 pounds, with females usually smaller, but they wear their bulk well thanks to dense, dark brown fur, often with a lighter collar or muzzle. Their stocky build and powerful limbs make them excellent diggers, climbers and occasional fence breakers. They thrive in thick forests, rugged mountains and rolling foothills, adjusting their menu to whatever's available. That could mean berries, nuts, roots, insects and small mammals. But it also includes livestock, crops and the occasional dumpster buffet when human settlements encroach on bear territory. They're experts at blurring the line between wild and human landscapes, a skill that's both a survival advantage and a source of endless conflict. Like other brown bears, Carpathian bears hibernate in winter, retreating to dens dug into hillsides, caves or hollow logs. Carpathian bears are mostly solitary, with brief romantic encounters in mating season, and mothers fiercely protective of their cubs. Male bears in particular are territorial, though they're more likely to intimidate with size and bluster than actually fight, unless a female or a particularly tempting carcass is at stake. The Kamchatka brown bear, Ursus arctos beringianus, isn't just a bear. It's a walking monument to what happens when nature hands you unlimited salmon and no good reason to hold back. Found almost exclusively on Russia's remote Kamchatka Peninsula, these bears are some of the biggest brown bears on Earth, right up there with the legendary Kodiak bears of Alaska. If you dropped a grizzly and a Kodiak in a blender, you'd get something very close to the Kamchatka bear, minus the questionable ethics of bear smoothies. Size is the first thing you notice. Adult males regularly tip the scales at 1,000 pounds or more, with some of the biggest individuals pushing 1,500 pounds. Standing up, they can hit 10 feet tall, a furry skyscraper with teeth. This bulk isn't just for show, it's a direct result of their salmon-rich diet. Kamchatka's rivers practically overflow with spawning salmon, and the bears have front-row seats to the feast. Every summer these bears line the riverbanks like burly fishermen in fur coats, snatching fish with practiced ease and packing on the pounds in preparation for the long, snowy winters. But Kamchatka brown bears don't just live off salmon. They're generalists with gourmet tendencies. When they're not elbow-deep in fish, they're grazing on berries, nuts, roots and grasses, flipping rocks for insects or helping themselves to the occasional unlucky deer. Like all brown bears, they're opportunistic omnivores, which is science speak for, if it fits in the mouth, it's dinner. They do look the part. Broad heads, long claws, a powerful shoulder hump, and a thick coat that can range from dark brown to golden. Though the coastal lifestyle tends to favour darker, glossier fur. Their bulk is balanced out by surprising agility, especially when a salmon makes the mistake of thinking it can outmaneuver a bear the size of a small car. Kamchatka bears are mostly solitary, except during the salmon runs, when the rivers turn into one big bear family reunion with a lot more growling. Despite their size, they prefer bluffing over brawling, especially when a prime fishing spot is at stake. That said, if a smaller bear or an overconfident human crosses the line, they've got the muscle to back up the attitude. Hibernation is serious business for Kamchatka bears. They dig dens into hillsides or find natural caves, bedding down through the harsh Russian winters after a solid season of caloric hoarding. The Hokkaido brown bear, Ursus arctos yasoensis, is Japan's entry into the brown bear lineup, and it's one of the few reminders that yes, bears do live in Japan, at least if you head far enough north. Native to Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost island, this subspecies of Eurasian brown bear manages to pack serious presence into a surprisingly small geographic range. While their cousins roam across continents, the Hokkaido brown bear has adapted to life on an island, which means less space, more human neighbours, and a daily schedule that involves less salmon and more creative foraging. Hokkaido brown bears aren't the biggest brown bears out there, but they're still more than capable of tipping the scales at 600 to 900 pounds for a large male, comfortably in grizzly range, and more than enough to make you rethink any plans for a solo forest hike. Their fur tends to be dark brown, sometimes almost black, with the usual broad head, powerful shoulder hump, and slightly longer claws that make all brown bears walking excavation machines. They are opportunistic omnivores, but they lean heavily on plants, including bamboo shoots, nuts, berries, and wild greens. Unlike their salmon-gorging Kamchatka relatives, they rely more on seasonal vegetation and small prey, though salmon does make it onto the menu when they can find it. They're also known to raid crops, making them regular unwanted visitors to farms and orchards, and occasionally helping themselves to livestock when the opportunity arises. The Ainu people, the indigenous inhabitants of Hokkaido, hold the brown bear in profound spiritual reverence. To the Ainu, the bear, known as Kimun Kamui, or God of the Mountain, is a sacred being, a bridge between humans and the natural world, and a creature to be both respected and feared. Traditional Ainu ceremonies once included the Iomante, or bear-sending ceremony, where a bear cub raised in the village was ceremonially honoured and then released or sacrificed, returning its spirit to the mountains. These rituals were meant to honour the bear as both a gift and a guardian, reinforcing the belief that humans and bears were spiritually intertwined. The Marsican brown bear, Ursus arctos marsicanus, is the ultimate underdog of the brown bear family. A subspecies so rare that you could fit the entire population in a school bus, with room to spare for luggage. Found in a tiny slice of central Italy, mostly within the Abruzzo, Lazio and Molise National Park, these bears have become living legends, symbols of Italy's wild heritage, conservation struggle, and proof that bears and humans can almost share the same landscape. Physically, the Marsican bear isn't huge, with adult males typically weighing around 400 to 500 pounds, grizzly-sized, but on the smaller side of that spectrum. Their fur tends to be dark brown with lighter patches, and while they're technically a subspecies of the Eurasian brown bear, centuries of isolation in Italy's central Apennine Mountains have given them their own genetic quirks, making them distinct enough to warrant their own name. What really sets the Marsican bear apart is how rare it is. Current estimates suggest that there are fewer than 60 individuals left in the wild, which is about as close to extinction as you can get without actually getting there. Despite this, the population has managed to hang on, clinging to the dense beech forests, rocky outcrops and quiet valleys of central Italy, doing their best to avoid busy roads, illegal poachers and the occasional overly enthusiastic tourist. Like all brown bears, Marsican bears are omnivores with flexible tastes, munching on beech nuts, berries, roots, insects and the occasional small animal. Given the relatively mild Mediterranean climate, they don't hibernate quite as long as their northern cousins. Some individuals stay partially active through the winter, especially if food is available. Brown bears are a perfect example of evolution's love for chaos. All of them, the giants, the mountain dwellers, the island residents and the desert survivors, can trace their roots back to a single ancient population that first emerged somewhere in Eurasia over 1 million years ago. From that point on, things got complicated. As the climate shifted and ice ages came and went, brown bears did what they do best. They wandered. Some moved west into Europe, some pushed south into the Middle East, and some ventured east into Siberia, adapting to forests, tundras, and everything in between. Then, around 100,000 to 200,000 years ago, a few particularly bold bears crossed the Bering Land Bridge into North America, giving rise to the grizzlies we know today. But just reaching a new continent wasn't enough. Some of those bears found their way to isolated islands like Kodiak, where they were cut off from their mainland cousins long enough to evolve their own quirks. Meanwhile, the bears left behind in Eurasia were busy branching out themselves, some settling into the rugged mountains of the Himalayas, others carving out territories across the Siberian forests, and a few hardy populations adapting to the parched extremes of the Gobi Desert. Each new environment nudged these bears in slightly different evolutionary directions, slowly creating the patchwork of subspecies we see today. What makes the brown bear family tree so gloriously dysfunctional is that the lines between some of these bears are clear, and others not so much. Some subspecies are genetically distinct enough to stand out on their own, while others blur together, especially in areas where populations overlap. The bears themselves don't seem too bothered by the boundaries, happily crossing paths and occasionally sharing genes when the opportunity arises. That's the full lineup, or is it? Did we miss a brown bear you think deserves a spot? Let us know, because with bears, there's always room for a little more confusion.